Good afternoon, and today we are going to talk about education, in British education and Uzbek education. So today we have a special guest, Mr. Jeyms, Director of Recruitment in school MPW.
Yes, nice
welcome.
To meet you.
Welcome. Thank you. So Jeyms, can we know about you? Can you give me a little bit your background?
Absolutely, yes. So I am a product of British education. I was born and raised in the UK. At university, I went to University of Southampton. I studied languages, French and Spanish, which involved me taking a year in France, where I was a teaching assistant. So I got to experience teaching English to French students, which was a great experience. And learning languages really gave me that global mindset to explore further beyond the borders of the UK. And it's been great to move into a career in international education. So I started in this field within the language sector, which was recruiting students to come to the UK to learn English language courses and improve their English. And over time, I was more curious about the academic side of things.
Okay.
So started to work with foundation year programs, and now within MPW, recruiting students for A-levels, foundation year, GCSEs, academic summer schools, a real diversity of programs, and very lucky to work with a great team of colleagues around the world, and being able to visit wonderful places like Uzbekistan.
Oh, thank you. You're always welcome here.
Thank you so much.
Right. So let's move to the British education. So what is a typical student stay in the UK?
So the British education system is a little bit different to here in Uzbekistan. We have a 13-year school system compared to 11 years, which I believe is here in Uzbekistan. So after 11 years in the UK, we have GCSE exams. GCSEs stand for the General Certificate of Secondary Education. And this is where students take more subjects to gain that general academic foundation. And after these 11 years, this is the end of compulsory schooling in the UK. Then we have further education. Further education would typically take the form of A-levels. Okay. This is a 2-year curriculum, and this is where you become a specialist in the subjects that you enjoy the most. So you would fine-tune your curriculum down to your top 3 subjects, which is, in those later stages, it's far fewer than in many curriculums around the world, which is quite appealing to students because they can really become a specialist in their subject and explore those subjects in a really deep level. That would normally take students to 18 years old. And then we have undergraduate degrees in the UK. The majority of those last for 3 years. Mm-hmm. Some last for 4 years. Medicine lasts for 5 years. And beyond that, many students may choose to take a master's degree, which most of those will last 1 year.
Okay.
And then ultimately, if students want to get involved in research, then PhDs would come much later on. So that's the general structure of the UK education.
Quite a long journey of education.
Yeah, and it really depends where students want to take it.
Right.
There are British students who will only go up to GCSEs age 16, and then they'll get involved in the field of work with apprenticeships. Yes. But there are students who love to study and might even do multiple master's degrees.
Oh, right. Which students study at your school?
So within MPW, we have both domestic students and international students. Right. We have slightly more domestic students than international students, but our international students come from over 70 different countries. So we have a really wonderful diversity within the college. We are very experienced in helping international students, and we not only help them to academically prepare for UK university, but that immersion with British students allows them to socially and culturally prepare as well, which is something quite unique. Because we sit somewhere in between international schools where everyone is coming from different countries and very traditional schools where the majority are domestic. And maybe you might have 1 or 2 nationalities that are quite prominent, but we have such a range of students that there's a place for everyone, which is really inspiring.
So it's a multicultural place that people can learn the cultural and then different type of diversity where they came from.
Definitely. And it's nice when we have students who are coming from so many different countries because English might not be their mother tongue.
Yeah.
But they can find students from other countries where English is also not their mother tongue, and they've got that shared goal to improve that and be academically successful in English. And so that exchange is really powerful, because British students are also great because you get to really, understand the not Queen's English, a more kind of social English, lots of colloquial terms and something very informal. But the British students don't necessarily have that same goal of needing to improve their own language. And so having other international students remains very important, actually, because there'll be more patience, there'll be more collaboration.
Exactly. And then diversity is always good for socializing and discovering that particular culture as well.
Definitely.
Well, that's nice. Do you think that studying abroad is too expensive at the moment?
So studying abroad is very expensive. I'm not going to lie about that. It is. It's certainly expensive, but it's an investment. And we find that around the world, different communities, different cultures value that investment at different priority levels. I will go to visit some countries where you will meet families and they're covered in Louis Vuitton and Prada and all of these expensive brands, and then they're asking for your cheapest program.
Exactly.
Whereas you will go to some countries that you might perceive as quite deprived, but actually those families have been saving up their whole life to invest in their child and invest in their future. And I think that investment side of things is really important, because it's such a good thing to set your child up for a successful future, and hopefully that will pay you back in a wonderful way in the future as well.
Absolutely, yes, I agree. And what are the real risks of losing time and money in case of unsuccessful or insufficient quality study abroad?
I think there are two different questions there, when we've got the time side and we've got the money side.
Right.
I think that when it comes to the money, there will be programs which are more expensive. There will be programs which are cheaper. Mm-hmm. Similarly with destinations, there'll be some destinations which are more expensive and some destinations which are cheaper. With any purchasing in any industry, price tends to be linked to quality. And if you spend a little bit more, the chances are you will have more quality.
Right.
So if we look at the university league tables in the UK, for example, the higher up the league table you go, the more expensive the tuition fees will be. So if you're very conscious about making a cost saving, it's possible that you will compromise on the quality of the education. And if you compromise on the quality of the education, the risk is that then you end up taking retake years, and then you end up lengthening the amount of time that you study abroad. And maybe that might catch up with you, and then you lose time by saving money. Right. Whereas you could save time, but by spending money. It's similar to if you go to a clothes shop. If you buy a very expensive suit, then it's probably going to last you longer. Yeah. If you cut corners and you go for a cheaper suit, then the wear and tear will show more quickly. Yeah. And that sort of applies to education as well.
Like a quality cost in a way.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, let's move into the next question. What are the risks associated with choosing educational institution abroad, especially if it's located in a country with a predictable political situation or economic crises?
Somebody once said to me, there is no such thing as a bad school, but there is such thing as a bad choice.
Exactly.
And so I think that research is so, so important. And I think that often a lot of risk comes from not choosing the right school or the right course for the right reasons. When we look at study destinations, I think that it is important to understand what is going on in that country. It is important to understand that country's history, its stability, because we talked about the risk of time and money, and if you have to leave your studies partway through your course and pick up somewhere else, you don't really want to go back to the beginning. Credit transfers are something that anyone in my profession will hear about a lot in student fairs. Yeah. We will meet lots of students who are halfway through their university degree and they're saying, oh, do you accept credit transfer? Can we come to your course? In the UK, there are some opportunities for that, but they're going to be very limited, and the chances are that you're not going to end up doing what you really want to do. Yeah. And normally the advice will be to go back to the beginning, and then you lose time and money again. Exactly. So those very politically stable countries will cost a little bit more. And again, that's a little bit of part and parcel of what you're paying for. You're paying for that security of mind, peace of mind, that you will be able to finish your studies on time.
So there is a question, is the expected quality of education worth the risk of inconvenience associated with studying in another country?
I think that when I think back to my own university study, the course was important, but the study environment was important as well. And of course, my lectures were very valuable, and the course that I studied was very valuable, and it's shaped where I am today. But when I think back on my time at university, I think about the experiences I had, the friends I made, and the opportunity to live independently. Yeah. And I think that going overseas is not an inconvenience. I think that it is an opportunity.
Yes.
I matured greatly when I moved away from home and I was living in my halls of residence at university. I matured even more when I undertook my year abroad to France to teach English. And I think the step when I went to France was so much more marked in my development as a person than even just, staying in the UK and going to a different city. And the reasons for that were I was having to rent a flat and set up a broadband and set up all my bills in a language that wasn't my own. Yeah. And I had to find such resilience to get through that. I mean, the French are very well known for their bureaucracy, and there were so many papers. And, I thought I'd get to the end of one process, and then suddenly they'd throw a whole lot of other stuff on me. Right. And it was frustrating. I remember living in hostels for periods of time and just wondering, am I ever going to get out of here? And I had days where I felt like I didn't want to leave my hostel. I just wanted to kind of stay in it and just be on the internet all day and not really exploring the culture. But I pushed through that. And I think when I went back to the UK after that year, in the job that I was doing in the summer holidays, my managers were saying, you're a different person. Even in my studies, I approached them differently. Yeah. And it was such a pivotal moment in my life that's what feeds my passion for study abroad in quite a big way, because what a great opportunity for students to have such an accessible way to access high quality education in somewhere that's out their comfort zone. So actually, I think it's a convenience to have these opportunities as opposed to an inconvenience.
Absolutely. And just you remind me when I was a student in India, because it's a very good opportunity to being abroad. It's a very good chance to discover yourself personally and professionally. And the second thing is your value will be absolutely changed if you have alone or isolated somewhere and far from family, and then there's no you don't feel that support from the distance there. It's quite challenging. At the same time, it's a good opportunity to discover. Thank you. Can you name 3 factors that exactly guarantee the quality of education abroad?
3 factors. The first one is definitely research, because this ties back to there's no such thing as a bad school, but there's such thing as a bad choice. And if you don't research well, then you run the risk of making mistakes. And that is what is going to compromise on your quality in a big way. Yeah. I would say a recommendation. If you know somebody who has been to an institution and can recommend it, that's always a nice thing. Yeah. Somewhere like Uzbekistan, for many study abroad destinations, it might not be commonplace to know somebody who has been to a certain institution. Yes. And so this is one of the reasons why globally within study abroad, education agents have become a really important tool. And education agents, sometimes people might have mixed feelings about them, but they do offer expertise and advice, and they have seen so many students go through this journey, and they are in such a good place to be able to advise others. And most credible agencies have had some form of study abroad experience themselves as well. So research, recommendation. When it comes to the third, I would actually go for gut feeling. I remember when I was looking at my own universities, I was doing campus visits, but I had some different first choice universities. And I remember as I was approaching my UCAS application, UCAS is the name of the application portal for UK universities, I went to visit the University of Southampton campus. And just the way that I was welcomed on the day, the way that I was shown around, and I also had an interview with a member of the academic team, which was in no way an assessment. It was just a very informal chat. And the way it made me feel, I had just had a gut feeling that I was going to have a really good experience at this university. So I've almost, to say research and then to say gut feeling and instinct, it's quite contradicting, but I think a balance of the two is quite important, because I wouldn't have approached University of Southampton if I hadn't known people who'd gone there already. I had a cousin, for example, who was studying there at the time. She was able to offer her own testimonial to me, but that on its own wasn't enough to go on.
Yeah.
And actually visiting the campus and having my own experience and being able to see it through my own eyes was the tick that made me think, okay, this is the place for me.
Yeah. How difficult is to cope with the long period of separation from family and then the relatives?
It is extremely difficult. Drawing back on my own experience and talking about that time when I was in France and having to utilize resilience at many points, it's a life skill you develop, but sometimes it will really kick in your fight or flight mode. And sometimes when things are difficult, some people will naturally take on the challenge and fight for it, and it will be in some people's nature to run away from it.
Exactly.
And we always try to support people to be in fight mode, not flight mode. And we within MPW, we surround students with so much support. That's a nice thing within study abroad, is educational institutions will provide support. My own experience, actually, I was effectively a freelancer on my own in a new country. So I didn't have that amount of support that I see in UK universities, UK schools, UK colleges. And there's such an awareness now about mental health in the UK, and even among students. Yes. The number of students now who are telling me they want to do psychology because they are aware of mental health around them and they want to help others. And, you know, if they've had a period in their life where they've suffered from anxiety, you know, they find passion within that. And it's become so much more of an expectation that these services are provided compared to even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I think you have to be bold, you have to be courageous, you have to be resilient in study abroad, but there is so much more support and better tools in place now to help students to find their fight and not their flight. That's
a very good point you mentioned, that support, which is like very key and necessary things that we need to give, like encourage them and just give not just the support financial, but also like mentally, especially people who are lacking of, they cannot find themselves in the society. This is a very key, I think, factors surrounded. Guarantee exist in case problem or conflicts between students and education institution abroad. And what about bullying?
Okay. So I'm going to break those down into two answers, really. So the first one was, the question was about guaranteeing success in education.
Yes.
The word guarantee is a really interesting word in education at the moment. It's thrown around quite a lot in education. There are programs, including a program that we run, where we talk about a progression guarantee. Yeah. For example, if you pass this program, you're going to this university. That is true in respects of, you know, MOU, an understanding of this course to go into that university. But it doesn't matter what course you go to. It doesn't matter what university you go to. You have to work. Yeah. And there's sometimes, perhaps there could be a misconception where, because study abroad is expensive, if you pay the fee, you'll get to where you want to be. The fee is just one part of it. You have to come and you have to work hard. And there should be no illusion that, you know, education is education. You have to push yourself. You have to study hard. You have to attend fully. Yeah. And if you are not prepared to work hard, and if you're not prepared to attend fully, then you are the one compromising on any form of guarantee. you have to take that responsibility upon yourself as a student to have any form of guarantee.
Yeah.
The educational institutions around you, they will offer support, and if you don't attend your classes in school, for example, they will ring you up straight away and find out where you are. Universities a little bit less so, but that's kind of the goal of schools and colleges, is to prepare you to take that self-responsibility for your studies. But I think that some people think, oh, we've paid all this money, so what can they do to us? Well, you're a student in a school just like you would be back here at home, so you have to study for your exams. Then you asked about the question of bullying.
Bullying.
So bullying ties in quite closely to mental health, and I talked about how students have so much more awareness now about mental health than they used to. They really are keen to raise awareness about it, and I think that reflects in the young people of today, in the sense that bullying may not be as prevalent as it used to be. I think maybe social media has helped people to understand each other in some ways, in a better way. But I cannot speak fully from experience, because MPW, we are quite unique. We are colleges where our students are older teenagers, and they have been in a traditional boarding school, perhaps from quite a young age, and they felt that environment didn't suit them well, and they've come to us to be treated more like a young adult. So in our colleges, our students don't wear a school uniform. They don't call their teacher sir or miss. They refer to them on a first-name basis. So we are treating our students like young adults, and we are treating them with respect and with maturity. And the benefit of that is that they respond with respect, with maturity, and they behave like young adults. We are located in city centre locations. We have timetables that make sure that students take responsibility and act like adults and are mature within their environment. That is so different to being in a boarding school where you are all together all of the time, cut off in a rural location. I don't represent a boarding school like that. I have read and within industry news and heard through insights that bullying has decreased a lot from where it used to be. Maybe for some of the reasons that I've speculated about before. But within our own environment, we are almost set up to eradicate that by the way that students are treated. When you reach university in the UK, it's like a breath of fresh air for students, because they can reinvent themselves. The people they've known since they were a young teenager are gone. Everyone is more mature. Everyone is an adult. Everyone can be who they want to be. We try to provide that for the students a little bit early, in the sense of, being yourself and being an individual. But in any case, the experience within a university is very different to an experience within a school. And the word bullying rarely needs to be mentioned in a university because of the way the lifestyle is.
Perfect. All right, let's move next questions. What about the different cultural backgrounds, and is there any psychological support? I think so we've been welcoming international students now for over 20 years, and we have become very familiar with how to make sure that our students are successful. Within each of our colleges, we have a position which is called the Vice Principal International, and they are a member of the senior leadership team who is responsible for making sure that our international students perform just as well as their domestic peers, and that they have all the tools that they need in order to be successful. So that means we have an academic English provision where students may need to take additional language courses alongside their core studies. We offer international qualifications, such as foundation year programs, so that perhaps they might want to try the British curriculum first, but if it isn't quite suiting them, then we have other programs that we can offer in their place. So academically, we have so much available there to support students and be quite solutions-based. We are aware that students will be coming from at least 50 different curriculums around the world on an annual basis. Then within our colleges, we also offer a Director of Study system or a personal tutoring system.
So instead of going to a form group in the morning and being with a group of students and receiving general news from your main contact, you have a one-to-one sit-down.
Individual.
So it's all about yourself. And it's so student-centered. The personal tutor or director of studies can ask anything from, how was your weekend? You going home for the holidays? Have you sorted your flights? Is everything okay in that respect? To how are you doing in your homework? And you've got a test coming up. Are you revising hard for it? And anything can really come up in these meetings, and it's what's important to the students at that very time. Beyond that main point of contact, we also have a counselling service within our colleges, and this is just in case students ever want to have a confidential conversation away from all of these other people around them, and it's just a nice service to be able to offer, so that beyond a house parent, maybe someone who looks after you in accommodation or your personal tutor within the college, there's also someone else who is not going to talk to these other people. They're more of a soundboard, someone who you can just offload with if you feel like you need to, and they will be so well qualified in what they do to make sure that students feel better.
And at the same time, like students sometimes, like who coming from the different backgrounds, they have a big boundaries, like there are the people who's not boundaries, like a barrier. So like when they integrate into new culture. So I think that this is a very good approach to destroy or to break this barrier.
Definitely. In the UK, in many ways, we're quite open. We're quite transparent about mental health concerns or learning difficulties or other topics like that. Some of these topics will be taboos in some cultures around.
Yes, exactly.
And we sometimes see that families feel the need to hide them in the admissions process, or even after arriving in the school to not acknowledge them or to find excuses for why these things might be happening. And so we are well aware that different things fly in different places, and we just do our best to make sure that everyone knows that they're in a safe space, and these things they want to talk about, they shouldn't be embarrassed about. And actually, the more you open up, the more we can support you. Because if you don't tell us something, then how can we know?
Exactly, yes. If you don't tell us, absolutely. All right, let's go to next question. Will study abroad become an obstacle to further career in your home country due to insufficient recognition of education?
I believe that it depends a little bit on where you study abroad, actually. Generally speaking, as somebody myself who hires people, I would value highly somebody who has studied abroad because they have overcome those personal development points that I mentioned earlier. And I value that in some ways more highly than I think I would value a university ranking. Of course, if you went to an impressive university, it's very important as well. It's very impressive, I should say, rather than important. It shows off a certain level of intelligence, which every employer will want. I would be lying if I didn't say that some study abroad destinations probably carry more value than other study abroad destinations. That might tie in slightly to the price of studying abroad in these destinations, but what I most commonly see is people referring to the QS University World Rankings. There are so many league tables around the world, but this QS ranking is I'd say the best known world university ranking. And we have domestic university rankings in the UK, which domestic students use. And the universities are ranked differently in that to what they are in the world university rankings. And I'm sure there's some politics as to why some universities are ranked more highly in some league tables than others. But if you look at the QS Top 100, there are countries that feature more heavily than other countries. And I think the more heavily a country is featured, the more valued on a global scale any education within that country is. Within the UK, we're very fortunate because 4 of the top 10 universities in the world are in the UK. And that leads the way in the UK's reputation on a global scale. Most of the countries I visit, because I, of course, within my role have to visit many countries, highlight how a UK education can really boost you on the employability scale, whether that's in the UK or internationally. There will be some things, though, that you have to take note of. One of the big ones is degrees in law. So if you take a law degree in the UK, you can go back to some countries and you can be a lawyer straight away. But some countries you'd have to go to and you'd have to take some form of course to learn about that country's local law, because laws are inconsistent in different countries around the world. There are considerations to make with a medicine degree as well. You know, will that medicine degree qualify you to be a doctor straight away in either your home country or the country that you intend to work in the future? Or will you have to, again, take some kind of top-up program or something else to satisfy the requirements of your local country? So it can be quite degree-specific if we're talking about a business degree or something that's a bit more entrepreneurial. Of course, you can use that anywhere.
Thank you. What are the real employment prospects after studying abroad, given the difference in educational system?
I think it's employability, and it's showing off those life skills that you've developed from putting yourself outside of your comfort zone, and hopefully studying at a world-leading university if you work really, really hard. I really stand by study abroad being such an impressive thing to do, and to this day I've not heard of any employer not valuing study abroad, especially in a really well-known study destination.
Okay. Is it easier to find a job abroad after getting an education in the UK?
I believe so. Even within the UK itself, because there will be such a familiarity with those universities. People in the UK will be aware of which universities are higher ranked than other universities. A lot of students get caught up on the idea of post-study work. Different countries have different policies on post-study work and the types of visas that you can take after you graduate. Yes. But there are still skills shortages in the UK. For example, our medicine degrees in the UK, the government caps many medical schools at accepting 7.5% international students because we have a shortage of doctors. The government worries that we will train up lots of doctors and then they will go back to their home country and then we're worsening that shortage. I believe that the motivations of many students is actually they want to train up to work in that country. But ultimately, we still have that shortage. And so if you want to be a doctor in the UK, there are programs to make that happen for you. Same with physiotherapy or with dentistry or many other professions. If you do your research well, if you know you want to study in a certain place, look at the politics within that place, I suppose, and find out where is there a shortage of a certain profession. Because if there is a shortage, then post-study work or not post-study work, there's probably quite a strong opportunity there. With that said, don't choose a degree or a profession just because there's a shortage within a certain country. Because you won't pass that degree. It's it's you have to be lucky in a way, because there's you can't force yourself to be something that you're not. You have to focus on what works for you, and let's take medicine as an example. If it's so competitive, if you're not passionate about actually being a doctor, you're not even going to get into the medicine degree in the first place. So don't cheat yourself, but do your research about countries and degrees and future employability opportunities. I was talking to a school earlier and I was showing them how when you go onto a university degree website and you're looking at a certain course, most of the time they have an employability tab, which will just give you some insights to, what a degree will qualify you to do and where graduates might typically go on to and how quickly they can be employed and what the average starting salary is in some cases if a university website is really detailed. So that information is out.
You just remind me when I was choosing my first degree. My first degree is in medicine, so it was very tough. There was few options, but it was like exactly what you said. Like I came across like what location is supposed to be and how it works over there, and my employability in the future. Yeah, absolutely. It's a really key factors when you're going. Right. Last questions. What is your suggestion for Uzbek students who specifically want to go to UK? What are the challenges and they need to take care into account? And what is your suggestions that they need to be prepared in advance?
I think when it comes to Uzbek students, there are some students who have very good preparation from a very young age. They might go to one of the British international schools here and already be doing the British curriculum here in Uzbekistan, but that's not the profile of all of our students, and many of our students are taking the local attestat.
Yes.
And the local attestat, this is an 11-year system, and it is equivalent to UK GCSE. So you typically need a bridging program in order to qualify for a UK university.
Yeah.
This could be A-levels, this could be a foundation year. I visited some really wonderful schools on this trip, and I was so impressed by how good at English these attestat students are, considering that they have most of their lessons with Russian as a medium of instruction. Yeah. But the best preparation that students can take from a younger age, if you don't go to one of those schools where the English department is so strong, take every opportunity you can to learn English, whether that be going to a language center here in Tashkent or elsewhere in Uzbekistan, or taking a private tutor maybe who can speak with you in English on a regular basis. If you have the means to do so, it's valuable to take a summer program in between your school years. The summer program will improve your English, but it will also give you a taster of somewhere where you might want to study in the future. The first time you go on a summer program, it will probably be quite difficult because, especially if you go to a program where you don't travel in a group, you go as an individual and you meet lots of other individual students, that resilience will have to kick in at a younger age, but you know that you're only there for a couple of weeks. And it's easier to get through it when you go for a shorter space of time, and you can make friends from around the world. And because you go through that similar experience, they will be friends for a very long time. And by doing that at a younger age, if you then go to study abroad once you've got your attestat and you graduate, some of the anxieties and concerns about studying abroad have been squashed because you've already had that opportunity at a younger age to just kind of understand where you're going a little bit. And we have students who come to us and it's their first time in the UK. Sometimes it's their first time leaving their home country. And they're coming for a 1 or a 2 year program. And I can't imagine how that must feel, but it's amazing just to see how the students cope and how much they embrace the opportunity. But you don't have to put yourself in that position. You can find ways to soften that experience by coming for a summer program, even go on a holiday with your family to the country. Just understand the country and, you know, little things like we drive on the other side of the road. So, you know, which way do you look when you cross the road?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for a lovely conversation. And
Thank you as well.
I hope it will be very useful for the students and the audience, especially Uzbek audience who wants to apply abroad, and what kind of challenges and then what's the preparation they should take into account. And thank you for visiting us and giving a good interview.
You're welcome. It's a real pleasure to be in Uzbekistan, and thank you to yourself. Thank you to everyone who I've had the pleasure of meeting here, and we look forward to welcoming even more Uzbek students to our colleges in the future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.